Hi guys and welcome back to the Cruel Room. Here we are, we're back once again in the wonderful, delightful room that is a room for ranting all about Formula 1. In case you've never seen this series before, I'm going to go through the drivers' scores, scoring them 10 for the highest. Bonus points are available if you do impeccable, and 0 for the lowest race result, and minus points are available if you did really bad. And yeah, I'm not going to go through exactly what 10 points means, what 9 point means, what 8 point means, like what Autosport did when they decided, you know what, we like that idea of the Cruel Room and we're going to make it boring. So don't watch it. If you've never seen it, don't watch it. And if you have seen it, you know how boring it is and don't watch it. So yeah, there you go. Oh, I love it. Anyway, of course, just to mention, we're going to have a few new features in this Cruel Room series compared to what we did last episode. Last episode, very much just getting back into the swing of things, and you all seem to have enjoyed it. But we're going to make it a little bit more funnier and a little bit more crazier throughout this weekend and throughout the remaining Cruel Walls, however many there will be. Cruel Rooms even. Cruel Rooms. Need to get back into the habit of that. So, we're going to kick things off, of course, with the leader and go down all the way through to last place. But before we get there, we've got a new feature, of course, and this week it's going to be Keith of the Week. Now, if you've never heard of this feature before and you don't follow me on Twitter, basically I want you to send in the most deluded comments you can find from the fans of Formula 1 throughout this race weekend, and we'll take things from there. We're just going to pick them out. If it's a woman that has tweeted the most deluded tweet, then it'll be Karen Corner. And if it is a male that has tweeted the most deluded tweet, it will be Keith of the Week. And today is Keith of the Week, and let me read it out for you. As we're all aware, Leclerc had a retirement this weekend after taking out his teammate. Well, this is what he had to say. Amateurish driving, even by bumping car standards. Okay. Most idiotic move in F1 history. Oh, I'm doubtful. Doubtful of that, to be honest with you, Renee. Save your love, my darling, save your love. There you go, that's Renee. If you've never heard that song, go give it a listen. It's shit. Anyway, you will never be world champion, not because of today, but in Austria and UK GP last year, you showed your only intention in Formula 1 is destroying other drivers' races. Ferrari made a big mistake with you. Oh, wow, our Renee is not loving life, is he? He sent Charles Leclerc that as well. That's borderline bullying, Renee, let me tell you. What can we say? Most idiotic move in F1 history? I'm very much doubtful of that. I think the most idiotic move, probably in recent times anyway, was probably Vettel 2017 Baku behind safety car. Or maybe Nelson Piquet deliberately crashing into the wall at Singapore 2008. Just a thought there, Renee. And he always seems to be ruining drivers' races. Well, I mean, yeah, Kvyat's been doing that for God knows how long, hasn't he? But no one ever does that. Grosjean ruins his own races often, Renee. Is he not coming to your train of thought at all? Yeah, anyway, that's a deluded comment. I just thought I'd include that into the feature. And if you come across any deluded comments throughout a race weekend, I want you to tag them to me on Twitter at Stocksy888, and the best one will get mentioned. So that was Keith of the Week. And then, of course, before we move on to the race even more, a quick announcement about, obviously, Fernando Alonso signing for Renault and what my thoughts are. A lot of people asked me on last week's Crew Wall after the news got announced. And, yeah, my feelings on that are very much 39. He's got nothing to offer. He pushed McLaren in the wrong direction, clearly, as you can see. Got rid of him. Look at what they've done. Massive change of fortune. Yeah, I'm not impressed, is my honest answer. Alonso needs to go, Vettel needs to go, and Raikkonen, as much as I love him, end of this season, it's got to be his turn. There's a lot of F2 drivers waiting in the wings there. Okay, yeah, they might not have enough super license points just yet, but at the end of this season, if they keep delivering, then they will, and then they can get an F1 seat. So, yeah, the old ranks need to go now. Get some young blood in, there's plenty of F2 talent there. And yeah, time to switch it up a bit. What was that? What the hell? It can't be. Was that him then? Oh my goodness me. It looks like we've got a ghost in the Cruel Room, everyone. And yeah. Jolyon Palmer. Wow. Wasn't expecting that. God, it's going to get worse this series, isn't it, as we go on? So we're going to kick things off with the winner. Eventually we get in there. So we're going to kick things off with the winner, Lewis Hamilton. And what can we say about his race weekend? Well, 1.2 seconds faster in qualifying. Unbelievable stuff. Yeah. There we go. Everyone's saying that, oh, well, Verstappen probably would have been quicker had he not spun. Probably would have been, yeah. Would he have been first? No. Would he have been about 8/10 off? Yeah, still about 8/10 off. But 1.2 seconds is even better, isn't it? So, Lewis Hamilton, sensational in the wet. It was like the wet weather wasn't even there. He just absolutely honked it. And we've seen how much and how quick he is in the wet weather. And he proved his worth again today. And in the race, dominated, won. But yeah, overall for Hamilton, what can it be? It's going to be 11 points. I'm going to give him 10 for the race weekend overall, and then for that master lap in qualifying, that's an extra point. So it's 11 points to Lewis Hamilton. Then we come to Valtteri Bottas, and what can be said about his race? Well, before we even get into the race, qualifying, 4th, P4 behind Carlos Sainz. Not fantastic. He should have been up there, really, but it just again proves that how good Hamilton is in the wet, and it's not always about the car, it's about the driver more in the wet conditions. Yeah, Bottas P4, looked like he was going to be P3 this race. He didn't really have the measure of Verstappen, but it was the strategy that helped Bottas as opposed to anything else. So Mercedes have to get a round of applause for that, but Bottas, sadly, I don't think he was worthy of P2, to be honest with you. But yeah, a strategy gets you P2. Good effort. Bottas, I'm going to give him a 7. 7 points for Bottas. It was a good race weekend overall. Qualifying wasn't on pace with his teammate, and a race pace wasn't there either. Then we come to Max Verstappen, and what can be said? He qualified P2, so he did get ahead of the Mercedes, and yeah, did a solid job there in that respect. Was never going to match Hamilton, even with that lap as mentioned, before he spun. He was still going to be about 7/8 off regardless. P2 was the best he could have hoped for, and that's what he got. And in the race, P2 looked possible. Red Bull really didn't. They didn't get the strategy wrong. They just had to try something different to try and maybe force Mercedes into pressuring them to get on the curbs a bit more and see whether that problem that happened last weekend reoccurred. It didn't happen. Max didn't have the pace. And yeah, unfortunately lost out in the latter stages to Bottas, and that was that really. Max this weekend, solid job. I'm going to give Max 8 points this weekend. I think that was a solid enough job. Then we come to Alex Albon, and what can we say? P4, only one position behind a more experienced teammate, and you think, yeah, not bad. But when you look at the race, wow, oh wow, he was struggling, wasn't he, bless him. It wasn't a deliverance of what he had last week. Last week, of course, benefited massively from the safety car periods and the tyre strategy. And yeah, he was a lonely soldier, wasn't it? And then Perez caught up at the back of him before the checkered flag fell and was pretty much guaranteed to get P4, but unfortunately just slid into the back tyre of Albon and knocked his front wing off. So, yeah, for Verstappen to be battling around with Mercedes, and you've got Albon battling with racing points and could have easily lost out. Not a good look. Over 30 seconds behind his teammate. Qualifying was nowhere either, P7. So, unfortunately for Albon, I am going to have to score him just a measly 4 points. Sorry, Alex, it was just not a good weekend from you at all today. Then we come to Lando Norris. Lando Norris, you go backwards, but then you go forwards again. It was a up and down race definitely for Lando. Starting P9 after his grid penalty dropped him 3 places after sillily overtaking under yellow flags. Nonetheless, silly overtake, didn't need to do that in FP1, and 3 places was fair. It was just one of those things. Then in the race, looked to be struggling, dropped down to as low as 11th at one point prior to the pit stops, and gained himself back up to P9 where he battled for the majority of the race. And then, yeah, we just had a sudden surge of form. We had to let Sainz let him yield to him because he had a lot fresher, better tyres at the end of the race, and then went storming through the field. He got ahead of Stroll, he got ahead of Ricciardo, and he looked like he was not going to get Perez. Perez was up the road. Perez was in a league of his own today. But yeah, then Norris benefited on the last corner to get up the inside of Perez, who'd unfortunately knocked his wing off and deranged all that into a funny shape. And yeah, he got the measure of that. So fantastic effort by Norris. He got lucky with Perez, but certainly P5 was deserved at the end. But just for the silly penalty, and of course the silliness of dropping down the order to start at the start of the race, which had he not done that, he could have been up with Perez anyway, battling for Albon, but it wasn't to be. But it was a fantastic race weekend by him, but it wasn't a perfect race, so I'm going to score him 7.5 points. 7.5 points for Lando Norris. Then we come to Sergio Perez, and wow, oh wow, he was doing absolutely everything right until the end. Oh, what an unfortunate way to lose a potential P4. It was just a slight touch on the rear of Albon's car, just on the exit of turn 4, is that? I think that's turn 4. I can't remember how they make up the corners of this circuit, to be honest. But yeah, turn 4, just tagged the back end of him as he were trying to go up the inside for an outside move around turn 5. Didn't quite pay off. Got a touch on the front. He was lucky Albon didn't get a puncture, actually. But yeah, it was a great race until that point. He was driving round Stroll. I mean, fair enough, he qualified 17th, and that was as a result of the tyres not really working out too well. Racing Point admitting they couldn't get temperature in the wet tyres. Which happens, you know, it's a difficult thing. It doesn't happen all the time in Formula 1. But Stroll did out-qualify him, so Stroll did a better job on the day in the wet. But yeah, to be honest, had Perez finished P5 or even P4, I think I'd have been giving him 10 points. But because that touch that was just, it was just so annoying. I am just going to dock him the 1 point because I think it'd be too harsh to dock him anymore after such a superb job. But he did cost Force India points. So for that reason, I'm going to score Sergio Perez 9 points. Then we come to Perez's teammate Lance Stroll, who qualified in, was it 12th? I think it was 12th or 13th in the end. So did a better job than Perez, but still not fantastic for the Racing Point. As mentioned, he suffered the same. Couldn't get temperature in the wet weather tyres for qualifying. Made a good start and, you know, initially looked to have the measure of Perez, but then latterly in the race, Stroll just dropped off. He tends to do this, doesn't he? His racecraft wasn't there either. You know, Perez drove round Stroll, then he drove round Ricciardo, and Stroll was left pushing Ricciardo, sometimes literally pushing him off the track, before he even got past him. So, yeah, a difference in driving abilities and standards there, which I'm always admitting that I think Stroll is shit and he shouldn't be in Formula 1. But everyone knows that. But yeah, Stroll this weekend, okay, not brilliant. Out-qualified your teammates, I'll give you a bit of bonus points for that. So I'm going to give him 7. 7 points is a worthy effort. Next up, we do have Daniel Ricciardo. The one that he was battling with for most of the race was our Stroll. And Daniel Ricciardo, it looked to be promising to start with for the Renaults. Both of them up there, P5, P6. Battling with each other, which was silly at times. But yeah, it looked like Ricciardo was having a good weekend, and then it just all fell away from him at the end there. A P8 finish. Yeah, it was a good weekend though by Ricciardo. Was out-qualified by Ocon though, notably. That was a turn up for the books. Ocon did have a good qualifying. But as for Ricciardo, a solid enough effort. Started off well, the race, and just sadly went down, deeper and down. And finished P8. So for Daniel Ricciardo, I'm going to award him 7 points. I think 7 points is fair. It started off well. It didn't end too well in the race. And, of course, in qualifying, being beaten by Ocon. It has to be noted. So, 7 points for Daniel Ricciardo. Then we come to Carlos Sainz. And what can be said about Carlos after such a brilliant qualifying, finishing P3 ahead of Bottas? You'd have thought, right, he's on for a Lando job here. He's going to get up the order, stay there, potential podium, or maybe a solid 4th or 5th position. It didn't quite work out like that. He was running round in 5th prior to the pit stops, but then he had a slow rear left tyre. It wouldn't go on, wouldn't locate onto the nut properly. And unfortunately, that cost him 4 seconds, 4.5 seconds, somewhere around there. And that put him into traffic. And then that meant that when the Racing Points and the Renault stopped, they all came out ahead. So he did a battling job to start with to try and fight back up there. But unfortunately, it just didn't work out. He was just struggling with his tyres. He stopped earlier than everyone else around him, obviously. He had to let Lando through, which obviously paid dividends for McLaren. And then McLaren opted to pit to stick him on some fresh softs with a few laps to go to try and get fastest lap, which he did achieve. So that is a bonus point for Sainz there, which is a good effort. But to start 3rd and to only come away with 3 points, finishing P9 with fastest lap, it'd have been hoping for more this weekend, and I think McLaren would be as well. They were probably hoping for both McLarens to be up there, P5, P6, around that area. So I don't blame Sainz. I blame McLaren more for that sticky wheel nut, but it is one of those things. It's unfortunate. It's racing. For that reason, I'm going to award Sainz 7.8 points. Then we come to Daniel Kvyat, the last of the points finishers, the Lone Ranger really. Again, didn't see much of him, like we didn't see much of the AlphaTauris last weekend. They were just running their own race, running at their own pace. And yeah, he ended up with a point. It's difficult to judge how his race went, really. We're trying to compare him to Gasly, obviously. In the race for Gasly, they opted to put him on the hard tyres, which really didn't work out at all. And that's unfortunate. So I think maybe had that not happened, it'd have been Gasly picking up the point, as he just seemed to have that little bit more pace, did Gasly, compared to Kvyat. But Kvyat did pick up the point in the end. So a solid enough race. Picking up another point for AlphaTauri is more than respectable. His first point of the season, of course, after his suspension failure last week. But it is just a difficult one to score him, really. 6 points. I think Gasly would have had the measure of him had it not been for him getting put onto the hard tyres. But yeah, I think 6 points is fair. Next we come to, of course, Kimi Räikkönen finishing P11, just missing out on the final points paying position. And what can be said about Alpha? It was a difficult one to judge again, really, this weekend. They seem to have got a bit better compared to last weekend's race pace. They did tend to have a bit of a race this weekend, which is a lot better compared to last. So we're racing around with the Haas's, of course, the pair of them, and just getting a bit more stuck in it. The car seemed a bit more lively. They both got knocked out in Q1. That was as a result, really, for Raikkonen of Giovinazzi crashing it into the wall while he was on a lap. Otherwise, he could have got through, potentially, but the pace wasn't there in previous laps. So, yeah, they're out, really. It's that Ferrari engine as well that's not doing great. But I think Kimi did a solid enough job with the equipment he had, especially considering he lost all that time in the Turn 3 incident with the two Ferraris. He was wedged behind that and had to stop the car and put it down some gears and then, right, we're going to go again, and then set off and trundled his way in last place. So to come through from 11th after that was a good effort as well. So all in all, I'm going to give Kimi Räikkönen 7 points. I think he deserves 7. I think it was a solid enough weekend. Unfortunate just to miss out on points. But the pace of that car's just not there yet, is it? So 7 points for Raikkonen. Then we come to K-Mag. The Haas's having a double finish this weekend, which is a fantastic effort for them. And yeah, brakes looked to be an issue early in the race, with a couple of them going wide. But thankfully, they made it across the line and finished P12 for K-Mag. So a respectable result there. Racing round, as mentioned, with the Alphas, his teammate Grosjean, and the Williams at certain points of the race as well. So all in all, a better weekend for the Haas's. Again, difficult to judge because it's got that shitty Ferrari engine in the back of it again, which is just really hampering the overall performance of the car. But to be racing round with the other Ferrari engine cars in the Alphas, and K-Mag getting through to Q2 as well is a solid effort. So a better weekend this weekend for K-Mag. Can judge him a bit more fairly, but I just don't think it's fair enough. But I'm going to score him 7.2 points. 7.2 on the point scale there. I think it was a good weekend. I don't think it was quite an 8. But yeah, definitely respectable, 7.2. Then, as mentioned, we do come to Kevin Magnussen's teammate, and we come to Roman Grosjean. Yeah, out in Q1 this time, so reversal of fortune for the Haas's. Didn't get a time in at all, unfortunately. He went straight on at turn 4 in qualifying and pulled into the pits, and that was the end of his day. So I think it was a brake issue. Then they worked on the car overnight, and that created him to have a pit lane start. And then from there, battled his way up to P13. So all in all, a decent race by Grosjean. Didn't see him getting involved in too many accidents, which is always a bonus. He didn't knock his front wing off. He didn't have a trip through the gravel in the race. So, yeah, Grosjean, what can be said about him? Unfortunate in qualifying and in the race. Did a solid enough job battling around with his teammate. So I'm going to give him 7 points. Then we come to Giovinazzi, and what can be said about him? He was the only one to crash in qualifying and bin it and do damage to his rear wing, and then have gearbox damage as well as a result of that accident. So that would have been a 5-place grid drop. Qualified 19th. Grosjean had worked on his car overnight. He started 19th. One of those things, really. It didn't impress me that much this weekend again. Kimi was ordered to get past, and he said, look, you know, Gio, you've got to yield. Kimi's faster. So, unfortunately, in that respect, again, slightly different strategy with Giovinazzi stopping earlier than Kimi, so his tyres were older, which is why they had to swap positions. But yeah, it wasn't a great race by him. It wasn't a really bad race by him, though, but because of that qualifying shunt, I am just going to award him 5 points. Then we come to Pierre Gasly, and this one is more the strategist's fault than the racer's fault, than himself, really, to be honest. He was dealt a tough blow putting those hard tyres on. They had to try something, I guess. They were thinking the mediums weren't going to last and potential 2 stops for everyone else. wasn't to be. The only two stoppers were trying to go for fastest lap at the end. But yeah, it was a shame. Well, he qualified 8th, which was a stunning effort in itself. And then was running around in 8th for most of the race. So brilliant. Had the measure of Norris. And of course, people like that. So it was going really well. He pitted for the hard tyres, and then that was that, sadly. That was it. Game over, really. And down the field you go, and had to have a second stop. A shame, but it wasn't his fault. So Gasly, based on his qualifying performance and his race performance prior to the strategy going wrong, I'm going to award him 8 points. I think he did a solid job this weekend once again. Then we come to George Russell, 0 to 0 this weekend. What a shame. Qualified P12, and as a result of Leclerc's penalty, ended up in P11, and he ran around that P11, P12 area for all of 3 laps, really. And unfortunately tried to go around the outside of Kevin Magnussen after Magnussen had just overtaken him, and he went wide at turn 5, bouncing through the gravel and down to last place, and sadly that's where he stayed for the majority of the race. What can be said, really? It was a shame. It was just a shame. He did such a good job in qualifying, but it all came undone in the race, and then stuck behind his teammate for quite a while before eventually just overtaking him towards the end. But yeah, unfortunate for Williams. I don't think points were possible, let's not get me wrong. You know, there wasn't the mass retirements that we saw last weekend. But I think definitely he should have been up there with the Alphas and Haas's, but his weekend came undone as soon as he went wide there and got stuck behind Latifi. And it was one of those things. So, George, a fantastic qualifying. I'm not going to take that away from you. But the race was unfortunate. So I'm only going to award you 6 points for that. I'm really sorry, but 6 points. I've got to be cruel. It's called the Cruel Room. And I think 6 points is fair. Then we do come to the last finisher of the race, 17 classified this weekend, and it was Nicholas Latifi, George Russell's teammate. And what can be said? I'm actually going to defend him here. He got knocked out in Q1 and ended up 18th. It wasn't his fault. He had 2 yellow flags on his fast laps in Sector 3, both times. One for Giovinazzi, and I think another one was for... Was it Albon when he slid off? So yeah, Albon went through the gravel, or someone did anyway. And then of course Giovinazzi crashing. So that were 2 yellow flags in Sector 3 twice, so he had to back off both times when he was improving to get into the top 15. And then he went to start his next lap after he drove past Giovinazzi's accident, and then Giovinazzi broke down, red flag. Damn it. Unfortunate. He'd have been in Q2 had it not been for that. And his race overall, it was lonely, unfortunately. He didn't do much, but he did keep the measure of George Russell, actually, throughout the race, for the majority of the race anyway, until the last couple of laps. So, a respectable effort, a decent effort, and for that reason, I'm going to award you 7 points. I think that was a good result. In fact, you know what? 7.5. I'm going to award you 7.5. I've changed my mind because I can. 7.5. I think that qualifying was unlucky, but you've certainly improved your pace compared to last weekend. So fair play for that, Latifi. Solid effort, solid weekend. Yeah, you were the last of the finishers, but you are in a Williams. So yeah, brilliant result, Latifi, 7.5. Then we come to Esteban Ocon, and what can be said about his race? It looked like you're having a good one. Battling with Ricciardo needlessly, though. You're on different strategies. Renault should have been more forceful. Sadly, we didn't hear much team radio between the 2 Renaults and the team telling him, look, get the frig out of the way or whatever. We don't know how severe the team order was, or whether it was just like, you might want to let Ricciardo through. And Ocon chose to obey it. Silly battling, unfortunately. Wasn't needed. Wasn't needed at that stage of the race, and it did cost Ricciardo because he had a lot of time lost whilst battling with him before eventually getting past. And then it looked like he were in for his scheduled pit stop, Ocon, and retired. That was it. Overeating issues again. So it was similar issues to what Ricciardo had the previous weekend, I believe. So yeah, it was a good race. He did a fantastic qualifying in P5, of course. That is worth noting. Amazing effort there. The race was solid enough. I think it was a little bit needless battling, and then he came to retire. So I don't know where he'd have been, but again, I think he'd have been in that gaggle with his teammate at the end, so it could have been an even crazier finish. And you had the likes of course, Ocon up there. Overall, a solid enough job by Ocon in qualifying. The race, yeah, it was going well. Needless battling with your teammate though. So for that reason, I'm just going to score you 6 points. I'm going to be a bit harsh on that one. I'm going to score him 6. Then we come to the retirements that really got the story going, didn't they, on lap 1. Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel. what can we say about that, really? It was a shame. It was a shame, big shame. The qualified crap once again, P10 and P11. Leclerc picking up a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Danny Kvyat in qualifying. So started 14th and then just lunged it up the inside of turn 3 and properly lunged. Got over the curb, touched the top of Vettel's wheel, and then his rear wheel took off the rear wing of Vettel. Vettel was blameless. I don't blame Vettel at all for that. And Leclerc did take all the blame for it. You know, he held his hands up. He said, look, I'm sorry. You know, it was a stupid mistake. And fair play to him for that. You know, Leclerc is an honourable man. He does tend to admit his mistakes. But you're doing that. And I just think there was never any room. I wouldn't have done it on anyone else, let alone my teammate there. That gap was always closing. There was already 2-3 wide at that section anyway. And then he just stuck it up the inside. So, yeah, unfortunate. Unfortunate there, really. Leclerc and Vettel. They did announce that there was no further action. But new introduction to the series, it's SAR. You've heard of VAR, which is, of course, Virtual Assistant Referee, to judge whether things were penalties, not penalties, goals or no goals. Well, we have got SAR in the Cruel Room series now, which is Sandra Assisted Review. If you don't know who Sandra is, then I suggest you click on the link there. I can't remember which way around it goes, but click on the link. You'll see an episode where Sandra was introduced onto the channel. And yes, it's time for the Sandra Assisted Review. Sandra, was that a penalty?
No.
Thanks, Sandra. Okay, thank you, Sandra. That was brilliant advice there by Sandra. She is a woman of little words. So, that was Sandra Assisted Review. And what are we going to score Charles Leclerc? Well, I was going to give him -10 because you don't take out your teammate. But for admitting his mistake and then also saying that, yeah, I threw it all in the bin. I love that saying. Get in the bin. Get in the bin. That's one of my favourite sayings at the moment. He used that term as well. So for that reason, I'm going to score him -9. -9 points for Leclerc. And then, of course, there's Sebastian Vettel getting into Q3, qualifying P10. Nothing to shout home about. And his race was over on lap 1. So not really much to say. So I'm just going to score him a middle of the road 5 points. We don't really know what he was capable of this weekend, which was a shame. So yeah, 5 points for Sebastian Vettel. And there you go, guys. That was the Cruel Room for the Styrian Grand Prix. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Was I too harsh on any? Was I not harsh enough on others? Let me know your thoughts and feedback. And also a massive thanks to Matty, who is doing the points table that will be popping up on the screen now. And yeah, he's done a brilliant job with that. That has the updated point system. He's keeping a tabs on everything because I can't, because I'm shit at maths. And yeah, he's brilliant. He's got a YouTube channel himself, just starting out. He's growing with confidence every video, so his link's in the description. Check his channel out, drop him a sub, watch a few of his videos. And yeah, thanks very much for that, Matty. Massively appreciated that you're doing the points table for me, because had it not been for that, I wouldn't have been able to keep up with these. So thank you very much. And thanks to everyone for watching. As I said, thank you so much for the response last weekend. Absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I'll see you next weekend for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Much love!